Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 15th of June. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. Ahead of the United Nations publication expected to be released later today on what is certain to be a scathing report on Israel's actions during the conflict with Gaza last summer, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu went on the offensive to delegitimize the critics. He said that the UN Human Rights Council investigation has nothing to do with human rights and everything to do with politically motivated attacks in a cynical effort to defame Israel using UN bodies. He stressed that the IDF goes to great lengths to prevent harm to civilians, even those on the enemy side, and not out of concern for any committee, but because it is deeply ingrained in the nation's value system.
Mr. Minister, yesterday I received our official government report about last year's conflict in Gaza. The report demonstrates unequivocally that our military actions during that conflict were in full accordance with international law, that Israel was exercising its legitimate right of self-defense. We fulfill our responsibility to protect our people against terrorists who perpetuate and perpetrate a double war crime. Hamas terrorists deliberately target our civilians while deliberately hiding behind their civilians. That's a double war crime. And I think that it underpoints the fact that there is a travesty here, because even though we're fighting Hamas terrorists who are committing the double war crime of targeting our civilians while hiding behind their civilians, Israel operates in accordance with the highest standards of international law. We take every step to avoid civilian casualties, including on the enemy's sides. We don't do this because of some UN committee. We do it because this is deeply ingrained in our values. We don't shrink from investigating ourselves when necessary, and Israel's mechanisms to investigate our own military are second to none. I say that without any hesitation. There is no country that investigates its military for possible wrongdoings more than Israel. There is no such country in the world. We examine all such allegations professionally, thoroughly. They're subjected to an independent judicial review by military and civilian courts. Now I compare this to this committee that we have, the UN Human Rights Committee that has put a so-called investigation against Israel. Israel was pronounced guilty before the investigation even began. They appointed a person to head this committee who was being paid by the Palestinians. This committee has more resolutions against Israel than against North Korea, Syria, and Iran combined. This tells you of what we're dealing with. So this campaign, these attacks against Israel, these investigations against Israel have nothing to do with human rights.
Tensions are still mounting between performing artists and Minister of Culture Miri Regev, although several members of Knesset today came to her defense over remarks from actor Oded Kotler, who mocked the cabinet minister and equated supporters of her Likud party with beasts. Kotler has since retracted his statements, but the hot-button issue of Regev versus the artists is continuing to simmer. We get more from IBA's Aryeh O'Sullivan.
Oded Kotler, a well-known Israeli actor, realized he went too far. Speaking last night at a rally in Jaffa, he mocked Culture Minister Miri Regev for her threats to withhold state funding for artists whose politics she disagrees with. He said, "Imagine your world is quiet, without books, music, and poems. A world where no one disturbs you, and no one stops the nation from celebrating the 30 Knesset seats, which are followed by a herd of cud-chewing beasts." His comments were cheered by dozens of actors, filmmakers, and musicians, many of whom also signed a petition protesting the undemocratic steps being taken by Regev and Education Minister Naftali Bennett against performances and works that aim, in their view, to delegitimize the Jewish state. Actors said Regev and Bennett were trying to stifle them and limit their freedom of speech. Regev lashed out against Kotler, saying his equating Likud voters with animals revealed his ugly and patronizing face and was nothing but cultural darkness. MKs from the right and left also criticized Kotler.
What I advise him to do is just to shut up his mouth at this case and apologize and say, I'm sorry for what was said, and let's go on. That's it. Otherwise, it will be just the opposite of what he meant and many other good people on his side. They just destroy the case.
I would recommend that government should not control culture. I think there is a big problem when government decides what is right and what is wrong in culture. So it's true that there is funding to allocate, but it needs to be on a very, I would say, technical terms, and not on, I would say, things like is it blemishing, tarnishing Israel, because it's a slippery slope, saying what is. Is it about homosexuals? Is it about Palestinians? Is it about, and we have a flourishing cultural arena in Israel, and we should open it, and it's fair enough to criticize that there's too many one-sided discussions in culture. That's fair enough, but it should stay on a discourse and not on the side where politicians decide what is right and what is wrong in culture.
Can you understand the frustration by actors now because of the fears that funding may be cut?
Well, that kind of situation can be dealt with around the table, sitting with the minister and other professional peoples to find the solution. No one is not willing to close any kind of cultural activities. So that can be in a peaceful way, in a mutual understanding, in dialogue, not by using uncivilized statements.
By this afternoon, Kotler found himself knee-deep in you-know-what and retracted his comments. He said he intended to say that what he wanted was a society where there was free art and not a herd mentality. Ari O'Sullivan for IBA News.
Minister Regev has also announced that government funding of next month's Jerusalem International Film Festival could be withdrawn after it was revealed that the roster includes the screening of a controversial documentary said to reveal the softer side of Yigal Amir, who assassinated Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. The film, called Beyond the Fear, was directed by well-known former Soviet documentary filmmaker Hertz Frank and focuses on the relationship between Amir and Larissa Trembovler, the divorced mother of four he married in 2004, with whom he since had a son. The Jerusalem Cinematheque has issued a statement that the showing of the film does not mean that it takes one position or another and that it does not censor films. Here now is a portion of the trailer.
אני מאמין שיש סיכוי לשלום, סיכוי גדול.
למה הסתכלת עליהם?
כי רציתי צריך להסביר למה עשיתי, למה זה, אתה יודע, זה חשוב.
אנשים פחדו לזה והיא לא.
זה הזונה הזאת שהייתה אימא וכמה ילדים הלכה לדבר כזה.
אירוטיקה בכלא והשב"ס נעמד על הרגליים.
Both members of Knesset on the right and the left say that the film should not be screened.
That film should not be shown in Israel. That's it. I don't want to see the human face of Yigal Amir. I don't believe he has human face, and if he has it, it's his own business. For us, there is one single face, the face of a murderer, that his voice, his picture, his face should not be shown on the public arena.
In other news, Attorney General Yehuda Weinstein has closed the investigation against the policeman who beat an IDF soldier of Ethiopian descent last month in an incident that sparked mass demonstrations by members of the community and their supporters around the country. The probe concluded that Damas Pakada had instigated the confrontation by striking the officer after refusing to obey his orders to leave the area that had been closed because of a suspicious object. The Attorney General found that the circumstances do not warrant the criminal prosecution of the officer and that there was no racial motivation behind his actions. All charges against Pakata for attacking a policeman and using violence have also been dropped. The police investigation unit has, however, decided to transfer the case to a disciplinary tribunal to examine the conduct of the officer, who's already been fired. Video footage of the confrontation led to widespread outrage among Ethiopia-born Israelis who launched a series of protests against claims of discrimination, racism, and police brutality that sometimes became violent. The compromise proposed by Prime Minister Netanyahu was approved by the Likud Central Committee yesterday to change how the party will elect its candidates for the next election cycle. The selection of the faction's top candidates will continue to be chosen by the 100,000 members, although slots reserved for new competitors from specific regions further down the list will be chosen by the 3,700-member Likud Central Committee. Netanyahu's proposal was backed by 58% of the vote. The Prime Minister thanked the committee for demonstrating responsibility, supporting his initiative, and for voting in favor of the Likud and internal unity. He also promised that the decision will help Likud to lead the country as the ruling party for many years to come. Visiting President of Cyprus, Nikos Anastasiadis, was greeted by President Reuven Rivlin at the presidential residence in Jerusalem today. The welcoming committee was held in the presence of leaders from various religious groups based in the capital, including Patriarch Theophilus III. Rivlin noted that both Israel and Cyprus are small countries that share common threats in the shape of radical Islam, and also said that he was open to Nicosia's input in helping to resolve Israel's conflict with the Palestinians. During his own remarks, Anastasiadis said that the close proximity between Cyprus and Israel partly accounts for their close relations, but that the friendship extends beyond that, with the sharing of common democratic values and concerns, which he said is why the two nations have grown to rely on each other's assistance, and with the knowledge that both can certainly gain from this cooperation.
Israel and Cyprus are both small countries with great peoples, and share common threats in the shape of radical Islam, Iran, and the ongoing conflict unfortunate what is going on in Syria. Yet, with the challenges brought by these threats comes the opportunity to form new alliances, where shared values and concern replace previous fears and conflicts. I want to thank you for your country's support, for the need to find solutions to the 150 years of old tragedy of the Jews and Arabs in this land, what people call the conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Cyprus has always been a quiet partner for peace, especially you, Mr. President, and we have to emphasize that, have always been a wise and patient voice in the search for the end of the conflict of this region.
I would like to wish from this stand for a solution to the Middle East problem that will bring about peace, stability and prosperity, not only for the Israelis, but for the whole region and its peoples. Cyprus will continue its modest contribution towards that end through its active participation in the EU and the United Nations.
Reports are again surfacing that Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is suffering terminal prostate cancer, throwing fresh doubt over whether his country will be able to meet the June 30th deadline to sign a nuclear pact with world powers. Reports that the Ayatollah may have just months to live are believed to have given rise to a power struggle between hardliners and moderates over his successor. Ultra-conservative Ayatollah Sadiq Larijani has allegedly already been busy purging more moderate potential replacements. He is the brother of the Islamic Republic's former chief nuclear negotiator Ali Larijani. Senior Western diplomats are expressing concern over how these developments could jeopardize the emerging nuclear deal, meaning either another delay is in the works, or if the Ayatollah dies or is incapacitated, each of the candidates may compete by proving their revolutionary credentials by vetoing any deal with the United States, Britain, France, Germany, China, and Russia. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is continuing the campaign to garner greater support for the international boycott against Israel. While speaking at the 25th African Union Assembly of Heads of State in Johannesburg, he called on his audience to refuse to buy any goods produced by Israeli-owned companies in the West Bank, and at the very least to require any such items to be labeled as settlement products to deter consumers from purchasing them. He insisted that the sale of Israeli goods manufactured beyond the 1967 lines violates international legal standards and stressed that similar actions are currently being implemented in Europe. Fearing more massacres at the hands of Islamic jihadists in Syria, a trickle of Druze have been approaching the northern border in the Golan Heights in search of refuge. According to Israel television reporter Oded Granot, the refugees were turned away from the Quneitra border crossing following reported messages from officials in Jerusalem to the Druze community in the Arab Republic not to expect entry into the country. At the same time, there are reports that the government may establish a safe zone on the Syrian side of the Golan Heights in an effort to help the Druze. The reports indicate that Israel has been in contact with the United Nations, International Red Cross, and a number of countries about the creation of such a humanitarian zone. The situation has taken on greater urgency following the massacre of over 20 Druze in northern Syria last week by members of the jihadist al-Nusra Front. An Israeli military source told Walla News that while there is no intention to absorb the Druze into Israel, there is also no possibility that the Jewish state would ignore a potential genocide of the community. Authorities in Turkey have reopened the Achakala crossing after several days of closure to allow in thousands of Syrians fleeing fighting in the nearby border town of Tel Abyad between the Islamic State and Kurdish forces. With the help of the U.S.-led coalition and smaller opposition groups, the Kurdish-led YPG is now successfully advancing into the ISIS-held Raqqa stronghold and threatening supply lines in the extremist de facto capital. Even though the seizure of Tel Abyad by the Kurds would deal a blow to ISIS, such a move is of great concern to Turkey because it would help to link up Kurdish-controlled areas in northern Syria and possibly bolster separatist sentiments among its own Kurdish minority in the southwest. Some 13,000 people have poured over the border from Syria into Turkey this past week, despite efforts by the Islamic State jihadists to prevent them from doing so. And in a bit of good news from Syria, residents in the mountain town of Malulu have managed to replace a statue of the Virgin Mary that was destroyed in 2013 when Nusra Front insurgents seized control. The town is considered to be one of the world's oldest Christian settlements and lies about 56 kilometers from Damascus that was recaptured from the al-Qaeda-linked rebels by the Syrian government troops last April. Both Christian and Muslim inhabitants celebrated the reinstallation of the 3-meter fiberglass statue as they applauded, sang hymns, and prayed for peace in the war-ravaged country. Turning to the world of innovation, and you can say goodbye to those illegible doctor's prescriptions, Israeli developers have created a new digital pen which can transform doodles, sketches, or notes into a readable text on your smartphone. The new smart pen, called Free, eliminates the need to write on paper or the screen by instantaneously transferring handwriting or drawings from virtually any surface to a variety of smart devices where the material is immediately visible and translated into the new font in almost any language, enabling users to share clear notes via text message, email, or any other mobile application.
This is a category where you write anywhere you want, on any surface, but you create directly digital ink on the target device that you want to work with. This target device can be a watch, or a phone, or a TV, or virtual reality glass. So you don't need a touchscreen, you don't care what the size of the screen is, whether it's too small to write on, because you can virtually write on any surface and just scroll the screen as you write. So you're unlimited in the space that you have to work. Incredible how different people find different uses for Free. Professionals want to work and annotate documents and redline documents on the go. Kids want to play, like draw something and send their drawings or sketches in Snapchat or photos. Construction workers can walk in a construction site and annotate a building plan straight into the cloud And gamers can finally have a tool to use in the virtual reality world to interact even when they are totally immersed in the virtual reality.
Pen is really an input device that you can write with it on any surface. So you can write, handwritten notes. You can also control whatever you want on your device. So it's like a mouse. You can choose menus, interact, do whatever you want with your digital device, whether it's a phone or tablet or a TV.
Now taking a look at local finance, and the shekel today put in a mixed performance in foreign currency trading, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange were down across the board. You're looking at the afternoon numbers. The IBA weather team tells us we can expect sunny skies and slightly warmer temperatures tomorrow. You're looking at the forecast at home and abroad over the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. We hope you join us again tomorrow when Laura Cornfield will be here to bring you the latest breaking news from Israel. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a great evening and shalom from Jerusalem.